Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Have a good meeting.
Thank you, Secretary Chan. We will start with the public comments. The public comment section provides an opportunity to address the Planning Commission on items not listed on the agenda. The Planning Commission welcomes your comments and requests that speakers present their remarks in a respectful manner. Speakers wishing to address the Planning Commission should limit their comments to 3 minutes. And now I'll ask Secretary Chan to moderate the public comment portion of the meeting. And at the end of the public comments, we will address any questions that come up. Secretary Chan, do we have any public comments at this time?
Thank you, Chair. Let's see, hang on one second. Let me, I have something to read. If you wish to speak and you're using the Zoom application, please click the raise hand button. If you are dialing in, press *9 to raise your hand on the phone and use *6 to unmute yourself when called to speak. If you are streaming the meeting through Zoom on your computer or dialing in via phone, please mute yourself so that there is no feedback sound during the meeting. If there is disruptive feedback or excessive noise during the meeting, your audio will be disabled. Okay, so we have one speaker has raised their hand. 510 with the last 3 numbers, 688. If you would unmute yourself. Have you unmuted yourself? Hit *6. Let's see. Go ahead. 510-668. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to comment on the Cloudwater development,
Okay.
258.
Excuse me, can you identify yourself, please?
My name is April Atkins. I am a field representative for Local 713.
I'm sorry, your name is again?
April Atkins.
Thank you.
Secretary Chan, can I just ask really quick, because I know that's an agenda item. Do we want to ask her to wait until that item comes up, or should we speak now?
I'm sorry, which item did you want to, what's the topic?
I believe, caller, did you say you wanted to speak to the Cloudwater item?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's my understanding. Is that right? Secretary Chan, should she wait now until we come to that agenda item?
That is correct.
Okay, caller, if you wouldn't mind waiting, that agenda item is number, I believe, number 3 on our agenda this evening. So if you could call back in when we reach that topic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers at this time?
Nobody else has raised their hand, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Should we wait a little bit longer or should we move on? Let's see.
They've had time to raise their hand and none of them have. So I think we can move on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with no further public comments, then we will move on to our first agenda item. And may we hear from the city staff on our first item?
You have to turn on your camera.
Okay. Commissioner Rose, could you, if possible, could you read the first item on what the proposal is?
Yes, thank you. The first item we're going to be discussing is a proposed single-family residence on a vacant lot, on a vacant 0.12 acre hillside lot located at 2382 Rainbow Court by Ravi Janadula, H&M Ventures, requiring approval of a site plan review and a grading permit.
Thank you, Chair Roche. Let me begin my presentation. This is
Jeremy, can you give Carl permission to share his screen?
Okay, try that again.
success. Good evening, commissioners. Tonight, we will be reviewing the site plan review and grading application 202002396. It's a multi-level hillside single-family home. This next slide shows the is an aerial map showing the location of the property. The zoning of the property is zoned single-family residential. The land use designation is low-density residential. This property is in walking distance to CSU East Bay and also Hayward Boulevard. This next slide shows the vacant property on the left, where the home will be built. The home on the right is very similar to what will be going on to the proposed vacant lot. Here we have the site plan. The lot size is 5,125 square feet. I do want to point out an error in my staff report under the development standards chart. I indicated that the rear yard setback proposed rear yard setback was 60 feet. It's actually 20 feet. What's interesting about this property, because of the configuration of the front property line, I guess the upper corner of the front of the house is actually set back 20 feet from the front property line, whereas the other corner is set back 20 feet. This offsets the house from the adjacent property. And this property will actually have a larger area devoted to its front yard. As I mentioned, this is a multi-level home. On the ground level, you have a 3-car garage. On the first floor, you have your common areas, the dining room, kitchen, family room, study. On the next floor, the second floor, you have the bedrooms, and on the top, you have a rooftop deck. Here's the elevation, front elevation of the house. It's a Mediterranean style architecture. The unusual thing about this project is that the subdivision had a condition where the homes on this particular lot and 3 other lots could not exceed 606 elevation. And the top of the rail of the deck railing is at 604.2 elevation. Here's the left elevation of the home. One of the nice things about this home is that the front facade has a gentle setback on each level. And so it's not a complete wall that you come across when you see this house from the street. And like the other house adjacent to it, it is nestled into the hillside slope. The other thing that we're looking into this evening is the grading plan. The grading ordinance requires that if a grading permit is required and the slope is average slope is over 20%, the city council has to approve the grading plan. The average slope is 21.3%, and but as you can see here, where you have the greatest slope is the front of the property, where you have a steep bank at 42%. The top of the property is relatively flat at 3%, and the side slope is at 14.6%. You can see the steep bank up front, relatively level area here, and then a gentle slope on the site. This is a cross section of the property going through the middle of the property from the street to the rear property line. You can see the area that will be exported from the site. It comes up to approximately 960 cubic feet. Because of the restriction on the maximum height of the building, they could not raise the garage to reduce, and the other floors to reduce the amount of cut and fill. Staff recommendation: we recommend that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council the approval of the site plan review with grading permit based on the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval. This concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm here to respond to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Associate Planner Imura. And now this is a time for the commissioners to ask questions of city staff. And remember, this is just a time to ask questions. We'll save our opinions about the project for after the public comment section on this item. So let's see, do any of my commissioners have comments on this item? Or, sorry, questions? Let's see. All right, Commissioner Ali Sullivan.
Thanks for the presentation. Very quickly, I didn't see in the packet any comments from neighbors. Did we receive or was there any commentary from the adjacent lot as far as the development?
Holly Greer, the property owner above the site, came in to look at the plans when it first was submitted. She did not have any comments about it. Her main concern was that it didn't exceed the 606 elevation. With the latest revisions of the plan, I also sent her a copy of the plans, and I didn't receive any comments back from her.
Great. The last thing I'll say, I enjoyed the car that was in the side elevation. It looked like a 1970s Camaro or something of the sort. Enjoyed that little picture in there. That's all.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Stevens?
Thank you, Commissioner Roche, and thank you for the presentation. My question is related to Condition of Approval 29D, related to managing runoff from the site. I think we talked a little bit last time with Mr. Wickstrom about this, and I hope that this condition can be better worded to represent a specific storm we're interested in. And I don't know if somebody could respond to that.
Good evening, Commissioners. Scott Wickstrom, Development Services Engineer. Happy to be in front of you again. In response to Commissioner Stevens' question, this was an earlier set of approvals with a different wording for conditions of approval. One of the things I'm looking to do is to standardize these conditions of approval. As we go forward, the recommendation is actually going to be to developers shall be required to mitigate augmented runoff to maintain post-development site discharge rates to be less than or equal to pre-development discharge rates to the satisfaction of the city engineer. And I do want to stop a little short of requiring a specific year discharge, because as these projects get very small with very small drainage areas, the practicality sometimes gets to be very difficult in terms of actually designing the proper orifice diameters, et cetera. So it gives a little more flexibility for the city engineer, and also looks at a broader range of storms running from basically a 2-year storm to potentially 10, 25, or even 100-year storm. So it gives the discretion and the flexibility for the engineering department to work through that in detail with the applicant.
Thank you. I just have one other question. It looks like the sidewalk and where the driveway is not accessible. I don't notice any condition of approval, or the plan doesn't seem to indicate that the sidewalk and driveway along the frontage would need to be made accessible. Is that something that happens during building inspection?
That is a component that we will look at during the grading permit detailed review.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions? Let's see, Commissioner Kinda, and welcome, your first meeting and your first comments. Go ahead.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Glad to be here. I just wanted to ask and make sure I sent in some questions in advance. They're public, so I don't have to ask those in the public meeting, right? That's all handled now? Okay.
Jeremy, can you maybe answer that?
See Commissioner Bonilla giving me a little nod there.
I'm sorry, can you ask your question again?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. So I submitted some questions in advance, and I just wanted to make sure, like, I don't have to ask those up here for, public use.
No, those are a part of the official record because we did respond to that, and they are posted online for comments received following publication.
So that's for the documents received after a published agenda.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for clarifying that. Just wanted to make sure.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Commissioner Stevens, do you have another question?
No.
Thank you. All right, no other questions from commissioners? All right, do we have any public comments on this item? And it looks like we did. I think I saw one, Secretary Jan.
Thank you, Chair. We have one caller, Holly Gear, and let's see. Mute. Hang on one second. I'm going to try to unmute her. I'm going to try to unmute you, Holly.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, very good. Yes, my name is Holly Geyer, and I am the neighbor that is directly adjacent to this piece of property, but actually almost 5 of the lots on Rainbow Court. My biggest concern with this project, other than the height restriction that Carl has already addressed and I see is fine with the plans, is the grading. There's a lot of earth, a lot of cubic yards of soil that will be removed during this project in order to accommodate the design that is on the table. And the area right adjacent to the back of this property is my main large patio area with at least 1.5 foot retaining wall in one area and a 4 foot concrete retaining wall in the other. And as development has already been occurring along Rainbow Court, I have already noticed cracks and, subsidence and some other issues that have occurred as a result of the development. And so I'm wondering how that's going to be addressed, how I understand it looks like there's going to be some retaining wall built with this project towards the back, but I have a pretty significant concern with, the hill and the stability adjacent to my property.
right, thank you. Is that all? Is that all you wanted to say, Ms. Guerra?
Yes. So I guess my really the question is I just want to have a little bit more information and want to know what assurances will be there in place to ensure that I don't sustain damage to my property.
Okay, thank you. And I think what will happen now is the commissioners are going to discuss the motion. So hopefully some of your questions will get answered during that discussion. Thank you for calling in. Okay, Secretary Chan, do we have any other callers at this point?
Thank you, Chair. No, nobody else has asked to speak.
Okay. Okay, then let's hear from our commissioners and discussion on this item.
Excuse me, Chair, you need to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Secretary Chan. All right, let's go ahead and close the public hearing, seeing no other callers to comment on this item. Thank you.
You're just closing the public comment, not the hearing.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm working on it. All right, let's close the public comment period for the meeting and move on to commissioner discussion. Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
Commissioner Okenda said that he had submitted some questions. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So Commissioner, for the public record, can you verbalize your questions?
I think, well, maybe Jeremy, comment again. Go ahead, Commissioner Okenda.
Yeah, thank you, Secretary Chan. I had asked that question, and the questions that I asked were all published in the documents received after published agenda documents. So it seems like that seems to be covered. So I don't have to verbalize, is my understanding.
Thank you.
Yep.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Joe? Jeremy?
Yeah, Denise, those questions were already included in the public record.
So they don't need to be verbalized during the meeting?
They do not.
All right, very good. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks.
All right, thank you, everyone. And let's move on to commissioner discussions. Do we have comments from the commissioners on this item? Okay, Commissioner Okenda, go ahead.
I only have one comment, and it's kind of just sort of general on the issue of having a single dwelling unit, the size of this kind of property and its location, and not qualifying under the Affordable Housing Ordinance. So one of the questions that I had asked was related to the Affordable Housing Ordinance, and because this is a single dwelling unit and the threshold for the Affordable Housing Ordinance is 2 dwelling units before in lieu fees kick in. As a matter of policy, I just wanted to raise this because this property is an example, in my view, to the rest of the commission, where I think it would be worthwhile in the conversations that we're having in the city moving forward for larger single-family homes like this to include an in lieu fee component for having only one single dwelling unit. So that's really the extent of my comment. I'm happy to, say anything more or expound on why I think that, but I just wanted to leave that because I thought it was relevant. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bonilla.
I just wanted to ask staff to address Holly's comments. Maybe the engineer or someone can address her concerns around, I guess, the residual effects that could adversely impact her property as a result of this development.
I'm happy to answer that question, Chair Roche.
Thank you. That would be great. Thank you, Chair Bonilla. Commissioner Bonilla.
So yes, the question, the concern of Ms. Geyer is a valid one when there's that significant amount of grading that's occurring immediately behind her property. The project plans do propose a relatively steep slope kind of starting at her property. I think the key thing to remember is that, and it's actually included in condition of approval 21, is that a geotech report will be required for this project. And that's something that we will be looking at and evaluating along with the recommendations for that slope stability during the grading permit review process.
Thank you.
So if there are problems that result at Holly's house, is it the responsibility of this developer to mitigate those because they're the causer of it?
Well, so the way it would typically work is the geotech is going to hopefully give prudent recommendations to prevent any of this kind of subsidence or damage to happen from her property. Unfortunately, if something still does occur, then the idea is that there'll be a legal remedy to address her damages. But the idea that we really want to pursue is making sure we have a proper geotech report and appropriate recommendations to prevent that from occurring. And that's what the condition of approval is, and that's our process through the grading permit review.
Thanks very much, Scott. That's all I have, Commissioner Roche.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonilla. Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you. I just have one comment. And again, I believe design matters, and the type of architecture that you use and the type of site design that we use to construct our neighborhood really create a sense of community. And while I recognize the subdivision was developed in 1978, I don't believe this is the appropriate use of the land. And I don't believe that this is the appropriate design for this natural setting. I also don't understand how the adjacent property had several large trees on it and they were removed at some point after April of 2019. I'm not sure if there was a previous grading permit that went through this, but I would encourage policymakers in the city to formalize some form of design review for all homes that are developed in the city of Hayward so that the community could have a say in how these projects are developed. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. Do any commissioners have any other questions or comments? All right, Commissioner Ali Sullivan.
I'm curious if my colleague can expound a little bit upon what he means by this is not the appropriate use of the land, because as far as I understand it, the land is zoned as single family housing. And so I'm curious if it's just a question of taste with the architectural design, or if he doesn't believe that single family homes should be put on the land.
So I believe that when we're developing properties, we should be respectful of the topography and the nature, and doing extensive excavation and building retaining walls and other systems are not really prudent, and that there are other forms, maybe a smaller home would be a better fit for this topography. I just think, as we plan and we design, I think we need to be respectful of our environment. If you look at this entire area here now, we're going to be filled with homes. It's all going to be paved. It's all going to be constructed. And we're removing all of the vegetation from this area.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens and Commissioner Ali Sullivan. Is that it? Commissioner Stevens, you didn't have another question. I see your hand up still. All right, I just wanted to add, when I saw the original plans, and then I thought, okay, maybe this is the time that this house needs to be an example that things are done right, because it looks like there were many other houses that were going to be built on there. But then I went up to Rainbow Court, and I mean, there's several really large homes that have already been built since the pictures that we've seen, and since, I don't know if people looked at Google Maps, but it looks like it's pretty barren up there, but it's actually all built out. And to hear that the caller is already seeing cracks in her foundation, I'm sure that's a big concern, because she has these huge houses coming up down the street from her and then across the street. And then this will be the last lot to be filled in, as far as I can tell. So I understand what Commissioner Stevens is saying, that maybe some sort of broader plan, design plan or something might have been helpful up there. But at this point, I feel like they're following all of the city requirements and taking, measures to make sure the grading is done properly. So I'm ready to move forward with this item. And with that, if we have no other discussion items, no other discussion, then do we have a motion for this item? Does anybody want to make a motion to approve this item?
We'll make the motion to approve, but a modification to incorporate Scott Wickstrom's recommended language regarding the drainage for the conditions of approval.
Okay, do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Ali Sullivan. All right, Secretary Chan, did you get the motion, and do we want to call a vote on that motion?
Yes, the Commissioner Goldstein made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Ali Sullivan. Commissioner Goldstein's added a modification to a condition of approval to incorporate language from Mr. Wickstrom. Is that correct? Which condition of approval would that be?
I don't remember the number, but it's regarding
29D.
Thank you.
Okay, I would need more specifics on the modification. Does Mr. Wickstrom want to share?
Point of clarification, if I may.
Commissioner Kennedy, 1 second. Scott or Mr. Wickstrom, do you have an input on that, on how to clarify this for the motion?
Yes, I would suggest that we replace the existing language in condition of approval 29D with the following. The project shall not block runoff or augment runoff to adjacent properties. The developer shall be required to mitigate augmented runoff to maintain post-development site discharge rates to less than or equal to pre-development discharge rates to the satisfaction of the city engineer. And I will send that language directly to Mr. Amura for the planning.
And if you
Thank you. Secretary Chan, did you get that?
Mr. Wickstrom, if you could email me that, please, this evening.
Certainly.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kenda, did you say you have a point of clarification?
A point of information I meant. Yeah, just around this item. So the motion on the table, we're just voting to recommend that the council adopt that condition of approval change. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
Thank you. A motion to approve item 1 with an addition with the language that Mr. Wickstrom will be emailing to Secretary Chan.
A point of clarification, Chair Roche, the recommendation is a motion to recommend approval to the City Council on the amended language.
Thank you. Should I read the language, the recommendation language? So we're approving the recommendation that the Planning Commission recommend to City Council the approval of the site plan review with grading permit for the proposed single-family residence on a vacant hillside lot located at 2382 Rainbow Court with the addition of Mr. Wickstrom's language. Secretary Chan, can you call a vote?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Commissioner Ali Sullivan.
Aye.
Commissioner Bonilla.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldstein.
Aye.
Commissioner Okenda.
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yes.
Chair Roche.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Roche, it looks like the motion passes. We might be ready to move on.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonilla. I didn't know if I was waiting for Secretary Chan to say that or not. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item number 2, a proposed cannabis micro business with delivery, distribution, and manufacturing activities located at 2416 Radley Court, Unit 3, requiring approval of conditional use permit application. Jeffrey Takira and of Green Grizzly and Diane Wright Trust, the property owner. Thank you. Can we hear from city staff on this item?
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners, and welcome, Commissioner Okenda. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then I'll go ahead and get started. Okay. So I hope that is popping up right now. Okay, the item before you tonight is a conditional use permit application from Grizzly for a proposed commercial cannabis micro business. Before I proceed, I just wanted to highlight that 2 new pieces of correspondence were submitted to the city after the agenda was published. One from the applicant and the other was from Balch Enterprises, who owns property in proximity of the project site. These 2 pieces of correspondence have been shared with the commission prior to this hearing and have also been posted online for public view. Excuse me. The project site for this business is proposed to be located at 2416 Radley Court, unit number 3, which is one of 10 industrial condominium units at the subject property. The property is located within the city's industrial park zoning district with a corresponding land use designation of industrial corridor. To provide a brief summary of the project, the applicant is seeking approval of a conditional use permit application, also known as a CUP, for the operation of a new commercial cannabis micro business that will include manufacturing, distribution, and deliveries. To carry out this project, the applicant would be required to complete a tenant improvement to the existing industrial building to meet current building code and fire code standards, as well as implement their odor mitigation plan and their safety and security plan. Moving on to the site plan, as mentioned before, the project will include the occupation of an existing industrial condominium unit. The unit will be surrounded by industrial businesses that include an equipment parts business, manufacturing woodworking business, printing business, a catering business, an appliance repair business, and a transit supply company. The project site is also an interior unit which will limit access for entry and exiting to one business facade. As for parking, the entire site has approximately 60 parking spaces, or about 3 to 4 of which will be dedicated for the commercial cannabis business. The slide above shows the proposed floor plan for the business. The tenant space is just under 1,740 square feet, and the applicant will undergo a tenant improvement to strengthen the unit security measures and to meet current building and fire code requirements, including upgrading the space to meet ADA requirements. The floor plan will be broken up into 4 main areas. The first will be the non-volatile manufacturing room where the cannabis extraction process will occur and where the odor mitigation efforts will be primarily focused. Next, there will be the distribution room where cannabis product will be stored, including cannabis products procured wholesale from licensed cultivators as well as manufacturers. Thirdly, the limited access area where it will be where the security equipment, vault, and administrative functions will occur. And lastly, the delivery area where orders will be fulfilled and unloading and loading will occur for deliveries and distribution activities. As far as business operations go, the proposed operation will include hiring 6 to 8 employees, including management. Again, their business will include deliveries, and this will be from the licensed facility to the end user or direct consumer. The distribution component will facilitate product transit from licensed facility to licensed facility, and manufacturing will also occur where the applicant will utilize an ice water extraction method and rosin extraction method, neither of which include toxic solvents or volatile chemicals. The manufacturing component will create extracted cannabis oils, vape pen cartridges, as well as concentrates. The hours of operation for the micro business will be as follows: 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily for the delivery component, and the manufacturing and distribution activities will be limited to 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. daily. It is important to note that this business will not be open to the general public for on-site retail sales. Prior to and during operations, the business will be required to implement their safety and security plan, as well as their environmental plan. The security plan includes the installation of an alarm system, security cameras, both interior and exterior, and enhanced site lighting, and enhanced site lighting to minimize and deter possibilities of break-ins and theft. The vehicles will be outfitted with security mechanisms, as well as their own alarms, surveillance, GPS, and lock boxes, and loading and unloading functions will be limited to indoors only. The applicant will be required to install odor mitigation technologies, including carbon filtration systems, to ensure cannabis odor is not detectable from adjacent properties. The business will install their own separate water meter, as well as an industrial water monitoring system to track their water usage and to comply with the city's water pollution source control requirements. The operation will also utilize a completely hybrid fleet for distribution and deliveries and incorporate LED lighting and low energy extraction methods to promote sustainability measures in their operation. Staff has conducted their analyses on the proposed project and finds it complies with the zoning requirements of the industrial zoning district and the cannabis land use ordinance, and is compatible with the industrial buildings and businesses within the proximity of it. The police department has reviewed and approved the applicant's security plan, which is geared to prevent theft and loitering and ensure the keeping of proper documentation and compliance with local and state requirements. As such, staff believes that the business aligns with the goals and policies of the Hayward 2040 General Plan related to land use and economic development to support local entrepreneurship, as well as a diversified economy. With respect to the California Environmental Quality Act, the project is deemed categorically exempt per Section 15301 of the CEQA guidelines for existing facilities, and thus no additional environmental review is required. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit application based on the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval. This concludes staff's presentation, and staff is available for any questions. The applicant team has also joined the call, and they are also available for any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Associate Planner Martinez. Now it's time for my colleagues to ask questions of both staff, and it sounds like the applicant's online for questions as well. Do we have questions from the commissioners? Let me go back over here. Commissioner Kinda.
Hi, thank you. So again, yeah, some of my questions have already been submitted, and so they're in the public record, but some of the questions had answers that were hopefully relying on the applicant being able to speak to them at the meeting. And so I'll just ask those questions. So first, are there projected revenues for the business? When I was looking through the plan, I didn't see anything there, and was curious if there was any way that the applicant could kind of speak to that, or if, if they felt they could. I have other questions too, but I just wanted to start there if it's possible to have the applicant answer that question now or later.
Yeah, do we have the applicant available to answer these questions?
Yes, the applicant, Natalia Thurston, should be in this call, and I believe she just unmuted herself.
Hi, my name is Natalia Thurston.
Welcome, thank you.
I was trying to start the video, but I can proceed by telephone if that's acceptable. The host isn't allowing me to do video.
Phone is fine.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Hi, I'm Natalia Thurston. I'm an attorney. I represent applicant Green Grizzly. Good evening, commissioners. In response to the question about projected revenue, in our development application, we projected year one revenue from the 3 business units as approximately $3,168,757. That's a gross annual revenue. So if it's taxed at a 7% tax rate on gross revenue, which I believe is the Hayward local tax, Hayward would derive approximately $221,831, approximately $200,000 in tax revenue from Green Grizzly's activities if those revenue projections are met. Does that answer? Okay.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you. My second question is, can the applicant, please, Natalie, thank you. Can you confirm that the hiring plan still includes paying employees a minimum of $20 an hour?
Yes, it does. And we intend on focusing on hiring local Hayward residents if possible.
Thank you. And also, does the applicant intend on participating in an equity hire for people to work in the industry who have been criminalized by cannabis criminalization in the past?
Yes, we will focus on helping to rehabilitate people that have convictions for cannabis crimes if possible, and they could seek employment with Green Grizzly.
Great. Another question, if either staff or the applicant can explain, I think the applicant would be helpful to explain this, the closed loophole process for cannabis wastewater treatment or use. I just would like to understand more what that entails.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that one. I actually had to call in with our water pollution source control folks over at the yard. But essentially, a closed loop system is for water treatment. Is typically a self-contained zero discharge system that recycles the water that goes through the manufacturing process. Usually that would only be required by our water pollution source control staff in the event that the applicant was undergoing any solvent-based extraction methods, but the applicant will not be using any solvent-based extraction methods, so this would not apply to them.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. And then my last question, at least for now, is about the disposal of solid waste. My understanding from the staff responses to the questions submitted earlier that the third party, trying to read my notes here, the third party designated waste management company is not going to be Farmers Waste Services. It's someone else. Why can I, waste hauler?
Yes, the third party is Gaiaca, correct, yeah.
And so I just want to understand my ignorance of this field. So if you could help educate me, what actually happens with the handling of that waste? Like, what does with this cannabis waste in particular from this facility, what will Gaiaca do with that? And does it go to a landfill? Does it serve some other kind of purpose? That's kind of the question that I have.
Would you like me to take that question?
Yeah, if you have the answer.
Oh, sure. So there's rules and procedures established through the state law, MAUCRSA, and the Bureau of Cannabis Control governing micro businesses and how they dispose of manufacturing waste from cannabis. And so that involves typically contracting with a third-party waste provider, such as Gaiaca, and then they come to the facility to pick up the waste that's stored in a separate, secured, locked container. There's paperwork and manifests that have to be filled out to mark the waste as cannabis waste in the metric in the state track and trace system, and including the volume of waste. That waste is then transported by Gaiaca's employees to a facility. It's not necessarily a landfill facility, but it's a facility authorized to accept such waste. And then all the records are maintained and updated and provided as to when the cannabis waste was picked up, where it was dropped off, and those can be provided at any time. Or if the Hayward has another location that they'd like to designate to use this waste or dispose of this waste, then we could work with Gaiaca to, if they wanted to use it for some other purpose, such as, gardening, or I'm not sure what you had in mind with regard to sites other than landfill.
Yeah, my question, and I thank you for answering that. So just to kind of follow up, and maybe I can do some more research on my own, or staff can help me later, just try to understand where does this waste go? Like, does it actually end up going into a landfill? Is there there's no, chemical solvents in this. So is it compostable? Is it biodegradable? What's the environmental impact of this business in its conduct in Hayward, and what are we contributing to in terms of waste? That's all. That's the real core of my question. So, thank you. Yeah.
It should be compostable. The cannabis flower that's used in the manufacturing process should not contain any kinds of toxins that would be produced in the waste that would somehow contribute to environmental harm. So it's typical to any other kind of compost waste used in a manufacturing process involving agriculture.
Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Thurston. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Goldstein.
Thank you, Chair. Question came up regarding the cameras that are currently required. Forgot the condition of approval number, but Marcus, can you tell me, please, where the requirement for the cameras came from? Is that a citywide requirement? Is that a statewide? Where did that come from?
Commissioner Goldstein, sorry, could you be more specific with regard to the cameras? Are we referring to the ones inside this facility, or that would be equipped within the delivery and distribution vehicles?
Delivery and distribution vehicles.
Yeah, so that's been a condition of approval that's almost been standardized in a lot of our distribution and delivery facilities that have already been approved in Hayward. It was crafted in collaboration with our Hayward Police Department, really understanding best practices of what other jurisdictions have experienced, and just making sure that there's, if there is an occurrence or an attempted theft on a delivery vehicle, that there's proper evidence, if you will, to catch those people or to investigate those individuals. So it's really for the protection of the company, the delivery driver at that moment, and then just for the monitoring of the deliveries as well.
Okay. Does the video that's captured, does it stay on board the vehicle?
It stays on the vehicle, or a lot of times it is relayed back to their headquarters or their office. In this case, would be at the Radley Court location.
At what location? Oh, Radley.
At the Radley Court, yeah.
I'm sorry, I misheard you at first. All right, so it stays under the control of the business operator. It doesn't go to the law enforcement. It's unless there's some legal reason to do that, correct?
Correct, yeah. Many times the condition is written as a way so all records, and including video surveillance, is maintained on file for a period no less than 90 days in the event that the police department needs a record of it.
Okay, so it would actually take a court order, potentially, unless the business decided to hand that video over. The only other way to release that video content is with a court order. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. It's part of our condition of approval that it would be provided to us upon request.
Okay, when you say us, you really mean the police department, correct?
Correct. To the city, yeah.
Okay, all right. And this condition of approval currently applies to all of the other similar businesses of this nature, correct?
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Stevens, did you have another comment?
Oh, I just had a question. I was curious if staff had any response to the letter that the applicant sent in this afternoon from Ms. Thurston regarding proposed modifications of the conditions of approval.
Yes. So at this point in time, the only modifications that are technically requested are number 2 in her letter with regard to the loading and unloading of delivery and distribution vehicles. I've had a conversation with Ms. Thurston as well as our police department, and it is a condition that we want to remain. So all operations and all potential visibility of the cannabis product is done indoors. So at this point in time, that would remain. I believe the other condition of approval that was requested to be not modified was number 5 in reference to condition of number 38A with respect to security cameras within the distribution and delivery vehicles. And very similarly, we have already discussed that condition would remain.
Thank you. Let's see, Commissioner Ali Sullivan.
Thank you. So following up on that as well, the note that the applicant submitted earlier today regarding hours of operation. Staff, I know we discussed this, that there is no request on that front. The question I have, though, is in relation to the hours of operation and what governs what is allowed. The applicant is requesting till 10 p.m. for operation. The question I have is there any, is that a requirement, or is that something that city has discretion on what those hours of operation could be for a facility of this type?
That is the framework and the language that's currently within state law through the Bureau of Cannabis Control. And so that's within the framework that they have established. So if this commission decides to be more restrictive, they can do so through a means of a condition. And for one example would be the manufacturing and distribution components, which we've limited 2 hours earlier than the state law would normally allow.
Thank you. And then actually one last question for city. I noticed that it didn't appear that there were any external improvements to the building as part of this development. Is there a reason for that? Why there's no associated sort of flourishing of any sort of improvements? Yeah. I won't say that there won't be any improvements. There will be some security measures that will be implemented on the facade and the building as a whole. So security cameras, exterior lighting improvements in that sense, and maybe the replacement and strengthening of that roll-up door. But in terms of the flourishing of the facade, that's quite intentional. We really want this operation to blend in. And if you're driving by it, you would not know that a commercial cannabis operation was even present there. So incognito is kind of the name of the game, especially for these types of operations. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bonilla?
Thank you. So, Marcus, I get kind of incognito is kind of keeping this thing on the low is the name of the game for this, but just channeling, our fellow or former Commissioner Andrews, they can't do any kind of public art or anything on this thing, so it doesn't look so horrible.
I mean, that may be worth a conversation with the applicant. I'd be a little bit reluctant to identify a nexus on this smaller operation, especially given that it's so small. I mean, I think comparably it probably is our smallest operation that we've had thus far, being less than 2,000 square feet. So understanding we've had applications we've already processed probably usually in the 5,000 square feet plus range. And so to apply it arbitrarily to this particular application, I'd be very hesitant to do so.
All right, just asking about it. It's always nice to see something nice when you're driving through your city. And then of the 11 commercial operators that I think the city approved, like through that council vetting process, how many have we approved already and how many are kind of still within the pipeline?
That is a good question. I might, I might need to tap on our principal planner, Jeremy Lakirko, to see if he has that off the top of his head. If not, I can do a quick little research and I can get back to you within a minute or so.
All right.
I can do some research here quickly and report out. I don't have that number readily available, but if you want to continue on with the questions, I will gather that information and let you know when it's available.
Okay, and the reason behind my question is because I've been getting a lot of comments that the Planning Commission seems to be approving a lot of cannabis stuff lately. And I know that it's all a part of this, plan that's been in play for quite a while, but it would just be good to understand what's sort of in the pipeline here. And then also one of the concerns in the letter was around, some of the comments we received from the public was around the limit at parking. I know that the letter says, there was 3 parking spaces that was going to be dedicated to this, but then the staff report said, well, there's actually 60 between like maybe 10 tenants or something. So maybe each of them gets 6. So what's up with the parking?
I would likely defer to the applicant to see what's in their lease agreement. However, I do believe that there is surplus parking available at the site. I'm not sure if Ms. Thurston wants to comment on that in terms of what's within her specific lease.
I'm sure the unit itself has 3 designated parking spaces, and then there's surplus overflow parking with the additional 60 parking spaces. We don't anticipate parking to be too much of a problem because the facility is not open to the public. So the only people that will be parking in those slots are either Green Grizzly delivery driver employees temporarily parking not to unload or load product, or authorized visitors, vendors, employees. So because it's not open to the public, we don't have any concerns about providing customers parking. So we hope that will satisfy the city's requirements.
I was just thinking of more of kind of just congestion and the whole parking thing for all 10 other businesses that need to operate there if this one's going to be taking more parking. But it sounds like you guys have that under wraps already. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kenda, did you have another question?
Yeah, sorry, I had accidentally skipped over another question I had related to the Toyota Priuses. Are those intended to be hybrid vehicles, if I read right, or are they? Is there any consideration about making them all electric?
Yes, we'll definitely consider purchasing electric vehicles if possible for the business and instead of hybrid. Definitely open for consideration.
Yeah, and would that mean that you would, in the parking spaces allotted, that there would be electric vehicle ready spaces or charging docks for those vehicles? I think that, so just in general, I know it's not a new construction as the staff pointed out, so the REACH code doesn't apply in a situation like this, but it is something that as a city, it seems to me like, we're thinking more about. And so I was just wondering about the charging docks potential. And
yes, there's definitely potential for the business to install that and try to use all, sustainable practices as possible to contribute to the clean environment.
Has Green Grizzly done any kind of additional, cost analysis to see how possible that will be, or is this kind of like a hope, or is it financially feasible?
It could potentially be fiscally. I haven't priced out any electric vehicles lately, but it definitely could be possible and within the budget.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ali Sullivan, did you have another question?
I did. Another thing came to mind. I know in previous projects that we've seen come across our desks, if you will, there's been component of beautification, so city beautification and dealing with any types of trash pickup or adopting a block or anything of the sort. I guess for the applicant, is there any, aside from managing your own trash, is there any plan to proactively address any trash that's in the adjacent area, or an interest in potentially adopting a block in the area as a good steward?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, we would like to contribute in all ways we can to the beautification of Hayward. And if adopting a block is one of the components of helping Hayward with that, then we would be more than happy to participate. We did receive some comments that Hayward was interested in focusing on preventing youth substance abuse. So we were going to initially focus our efforts on supporting, Eden Youth Center and other youth-related activities. But if the beautification, is something that is more of a priority or an equal priority, we would be happy to also participate in that as well.
Yeah, I think it would be in addition as opposed to separate from, or
yes,
it would be
yes.
separate. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
We'd be happy to, in addition as well, to participate in that. And with regard to the murals, I fully support and understand that effort, but I think because of the security issues that it would probably be best to leave the facade without signage right now, or any beautification. But we can contribute to other areas in the city, like you said.
Great, thanks, Ms. Thurston. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Bonilla, had your answer just to your question related to the number of licenses that the city has approved. In total, the city council authorized 23 licenses for activities in the city. Of those 23, 6 applicants failed to meet the timing deadline for submittal of their land use application. One additional applicant, their permit license was revoked due to potentially illicit activities. And then currently we have 3 of them that are currently up and operational. As you know, we have a testing lab, we have a manufacturing facility, and then we have the dispensary downtown. We have quite a few others that you have seen of the remaining of those 23 that are at various stages of approval. Many of those have already come before the Planning Commission, and they are working to actually pull building permits and build out their space, but they are not yet operational. But hopefully that answers your question. Unfortunately, because all of those batch of 23 were approved within a year. Unfortunately, the timing is that we just happen to be seeing a lot right now.
Very fast, Jeremy. Fast on your feet. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more? Commissioner Alice Sullivan, you had another question?
Yeah, Jeremy, just to clarify, so of the 23, take 6 that basically didn't meet the requirements, that left us with 17 eligible, 1 revoked. So that's basically 16 possible applicants that we as a planning commission could possibly see, minus the 3 that are open plus the ones that we've already approved.
Yeah, and just a point of clarification. So when we're saying 23 licenses were originally approved, many of the operators applied for multiple licenses. So we may have one operator that applied for a micro business and cultivation. So you may see a couple. In fact, we have one operator who has not yet been through the process, but they actually had secured 2 different licenses through the city, and they haven't come through yet. Another one that you recently, I think the Planning Commission recently approved, which was, I think it was Always on Time or Precision Apothecary. I think one of those 2 that came before this commission not too long ago. That is another example of an operator who holds 2 licenses, but only one is currently is active, and the other one is currently under review.
But we would still, an applicant can come to it or has to come to us each time they're trying to utilize a license, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Sorry, Jeremy, I just wanted to point out there was one point of clarification in there. There are certain land uses, so for example, deliveries and testing laboratories, that are eligible for an administrative use permit, meaning that it would be decided at a staff level. So I believe certain distribution ones and delivery operations with very minimal intensity can be decided at a staff level unless appealed.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from commissioners? A lot of my questions have been answered in the discussion, so thank you, commissioners. I wanted to ask, so we have three companies that are now online. I'm wondering about the odor mitigation. I understand that the current applicant is using best practices for odor mitigation, but I'm wondering if we have any data on that yet, and do we have any neighbor complaints from the different operations that are now up and running? And I think this is a staff question first.
Yeah, I'll answer to the best of my ability, and then I might tag Jeremy again. So out of the 3 businesses that are currently operational, one is a dispensary, one is a testing laboratory, and one is a manufacturing operation. With respect to the testing facility, I think likely they probably have a very robust odor mitigation plan because they are incorporated within a larger testing facility that does testing for food and other products. So likely cannabis is a very small product or a small portion of their total testing environment. As far as the dispensary goes, the one that's located in downtown, the majority of those products are already prepackaged and pre-processed. So that odor should be relatively minimal because it should be the packaging and the state requirements for this packaging keeps odor in relatively well. As for the manufacturing operation, to my knowledge, I believe they were also kind of in a commercial kitchen operation, which was kind of, again, a small portion of a bigger operation. So I do not know if we have any data currently on file that we've collected to see whether those operations have become nuisances, but it is these operations are subject to an annual review and an annual inspection where we make sure that they are adhering to the conditions of approval prior to us renewing their cannabis permit again. So those are opportunities for us to kind of gather some data and see whether they're complying with our conditions or not.
All right, thank you.
One point of clarification I just wanted to make is that the manufacturing facility that's currently open and operational is using a odorless cannabis tea extraction. So there's not, the product that they're using really doesn't emit a lot of odor. What we would expect and what I think is going to be more noticeable is when we have some of our cultivation operations that we've approved, when they come online, that's obviously going to be subject to some heightened scrutiny because those traditionally do, result in some odors that are, if you're next door, probably not so pleasant. So hopefully the odor mitigation that was approved with those projects will mitigate that. And if not, then we do have recourse to go back to the applicant and require that they strengthen those practices.
Okay, thank you. And then along the same lines as potential data from other operations, the security issues. So I know there was the question about loading the vans outside or inside. So do we have any data? Are these points of security issues that we know of, and have we seen any incidents? And even the process of opening the door to roll in their van, I assume that's a security point or security issue. So I'm just wondering, with the other operations that have come online, do we have any data on that yet?
I'll give this short answer, but probably not very satisfactory. Probably not at this point in time.
Okay, and Ms. Thurston, I was wondering, since you're still here, thank you. Do you have former experience with this as far as these kind of like points of, security threats to the organization? Because I know there was the question of loading the vans outside because you were worrying about the door going up to load outside versus bringing the van inside. Have you worked with other organizations that have these concerns, and what have you found?
I have my dispensary client last year when a lot of the cannabis businesses were raided. We had to increase, put in metal doors and increase security. And so security can be an issue with these businesses. However, with no access to the public, I think that the more you roll up and down the door, the more attention is drawn to the business and its activities. So it could become a potential. But if the city requires it as a condition of use, which we're fine with, what we'll probably do is build a cage inside the warehouse so the vehicle can drive into the cage that's locked and then unload it. So that way that could minimize somebody being able to access the vehicle or the employees inside the warehouse because the vehicle pulls into a cage. The one issue with loading and unloading with distribution and delivery is that all the cars are unmarked, including distribution and delivery, and the goods themselves, when they're going out for distribution or delivery, are usually very small. It's not a large volume of goods. So I think the loading and unloading outside of the warehouse in a discrete fashion with the security cameras and the security procedures in place could potentially be more safe than continually rolling up and down the metal gate that's installed, the roll-up door. But that's just my opinion from working in the industry. And if that's a condition of approval of this permit, we will definitely accommodate that, likely with the cage inside the warehouse to prevent some of those security issues that we're concerned about.
Okay, thank you for answering that. I don't have any further questions. And if we don't have any further questions from the commissioners, then let's move on to public comments on this item. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I guess we're moving on to, right, we already did that, right? No.
Do we have any? I think we need to open it up for public hearing. I think we were just, yeah.
Thank you. We're in the question phase. Secretary Chan, do we have, doesn't look to me like we have any callers. Do you see any, Secretary Chan?
Let me make the announcement. We shall see.
Thank you.
Chair. If you wish to speak and you are using the Zoom application, please click the raise hand button. If you are dialing in, press star 9 to raise your hand on the phone and use star 6 to unmute yourself when called to speak. If you are streaming the meeting through Zoom on your computer or dialing in via phone, please mute yourself so that there is no feedback sound during the meeting. If there is disruptive feedback or excessive noise during the meeting, your audio will be disabled. All right, Chair, at this time, nobody has raised their hand.
Great, thank you for checking. Let's move on to commissioner discussion. Do commissioners have anything they want to say at this point? Everyone's ready to move on? Let's see, okay, no, Commissioner Ali Sullivan.
So the one thing that I have some concerns around is the hours of operation and operating so late into the night at 10 o'clock at night when the adjacent businesses will almost certainly be closed. It gives me a bit of pause that these types of operations may be going on at that time. And I think it could be a potential attractant for, for theft or vandalism or other types of issues. And so what I'm curious about is whether there's an interest on the part of the commission to amend the use permit to tighter hours of operation.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you. I appreciate the community benefit program offering to provide funding for youth. But I just want to raise the concern that cannabis is not like alcohol, is not an innocuous substance, and that I'd really like to see in the future community benefits directed towards adults that could get themselves in trouble with cannabis. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bonilla.
Thank you. Marcus, just a quick question, but I'll be quick with this. So the hours of operation are consistent with other micro businesses of this sort in which we've approved them to be open at 10 o'clock at night as well, right?
Correct. For other micro businesses, distribution businesses, and delivery businesses.
Yeah, because I do remember a few of those coming through here, and we had concerns about the hours, but we still let it go through for the hours that very similar to the hours of this applicant. So anyways, I appreciate the applicant's, desire to move to an electric feed. Commissioner Okinda, I thought that was a lovely idea. At first I was like, well, hybrid is a pretty, cool thing that they're going to be doing, but, why not push to go a little bit harder and go all electric? So I really encourage the applicant to think about that. I appreciate their sustainability measures, their commitment to equity hiring. I think that's really important. So I'm really looking forward to that. I also appreciate the wage that's going to be paid here. Hopefully other businesses that move in will take the lead from you and start paying their people a livable wage. Thank you. Those are my only comments this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Okinda?
Yes, thank you. I also really appreciate the applicant's commitment to paying living wages and also hiring in an equitable way for people who have been criminalized, which tends to be, as we all know, Black and Brown community members under the war on drugs. So I wanted to mention that, I wanted to name that. And also, I was really happy with the applicant's responses to being open to investing in substance use sort of treatment and awareness and prevention programming in Hayward. I specifically want to draw the applicant's attention to, I did mention Eden Youth and Family Center. I also went to their website just to make sure that I could identify for you. Specifically, I think there's work being done by the Hayward Coalition for Healthy Youth. And they've helped with community big community events, pre-COVID, where they've done really great programming, bringing families out, including adults, parents, and educating people on the dangers of misuse of cannabis and abuse of cannabis as a substance. Having seen addiction in my family and including cannabis, I know that it can be a problem for some people. And so I think it's very important as we, look at the health impacts of our city with liquor stores and adding cannabis dispensaries and delivery sites, that we take into account the public health impact. And so I think that it's incumbent upon us as planning commissioners to really ensure, not just, request, but ensure that any new cannabis business that comes into the city is contributing to mitigating those harms. And so I'm really happy that the applicants seem to be committed to doing that. I would look again at the Hayward Coalition for Healthy Youth, and I would like to make sure that kind of makes its way on the. My understanding is that this CUP has to be reviewed under the cannabis ordinance by the council. Is that right?
No, the only applications that are required to be reviewed by the city council are retail dispensaries. So the 3 that have been approved in downtown. So applications such as these can be approved by the planning commission unless otherwise appealed or called up by our city council.
That's right. Okay, actually, now remember someone actually already mentioned that in this meeting. Okay, thank you. So, I mean, to that point, then I want to ask my commissioners if we can include more specific language in the conditions of approval that that the specific community benefit that they support include these kinds of education, awareness, and prevention around cannabis use. So it doesn't have to be a specific, nonprofit entity, but I just would like to be a little bit more direct or targeted about what we're asking them to do and support in the community. In addition to that, I'd like to maybe just for the future, maybe there's nothing to add right now related to the waste, but related to the waste, I'd like to make sure that we're being consistent with the city council's, guidance and our city's vision for being sustainable, clean, and green, and that this entire process of cannabis waste disposal, that we're ensuring where that waste is going, that it's not a landfill, that it is being put to some productive or more sustainable use, especially with products like that do not have toxins or other, chemical solvents that would otherwise, warrant it invalid for compost or other kinds of sustainable uses. So just moving forward, I think I want to say that I'm really supportive of making sure that we have that kind of eco-sustainable process, and that we know that in advance for applicants that are coming before her, so they have the answers to those questions, and that we can be sure about what we're approving start to finish on where these products are going, and that they're not causing additional unintended economic or environmental harms. And then finally, I think I would tend to, based on this particular project being delivery and distribution as a micro business, I would tend to support allowing the applicant to operate up to the state permitted 10 p.m. In my view. So those are my comments. Thanks. I really appreciate the applicant and staff answering my plethora of questions. I'm obviously new to the commission, and so trying to learn as much as I can, and sometimes feels like a fire hose, but I appreciate you and your patience.
Thank you, Commissioner Kenda. You're doing great. Commissioner Ali Sullivan, did you have more comments?
Yeah, Marcus, can you just confirm, because it could just be my wishful thinking since I was the one that brought it up last time regarding the hours of operation. We did not amend hours of operation of a previous permit. We kept it at the 10 p.m. allowance. Is that correct?
Yes, we worked on cannabis applications that we have allowed the delivery component to extend to 10 p.m.
Okay.
All right, thank you, everyone. I also thank you to city staff for putting this together for us, and thank you to the applicant for being so willing to accept the community benefits and try to be as cooperative as you can with the city. I agree with all my other commissioners on this, on what they're trying to do for hiring Hayward, and the wage is great, and the community benefits. And I do want to say, we've asked all the different organizations that have come before us talk about the community benefits. And I know we've talked about this before, but it would be nice if we're going to have some way to, to monitor this or audit the different community benefits. And we'll see based on the motion if we're going to try to add that here. And to make that part of the motion. But I like going forward, it would be nice to know how we're following up with all the organizations on the different community benefits that we're asking people to be part of. So thank you.
Just to clarify, just one point of clarification for the commission that is, the city council had a discussion about community benefits last year. And that was part of the rationale for increasing the effective tax rate on cannabis from 6%, increasing it to 7%. The guise underneath that motion or underneath that action was that some of those proceeds from cannabis revenues would actually be set aside for a community tax or community benefit program that has to be developed and would be distributed by the city council as priorities as they see fit. We haven't actually received any tax from cannabis until just, I think, a couple months ago. So that pot is relatively small right now, but that's not to say that once we get a larger pot of funds that those can't be reallocated toward a community benefit. But just to clarify that the community benefit component is something that was specifically discussed at the council level and was very intentional by increasing that extra 1%. And the reason for that is because the council wanted to basically have an opportunity to make sure that the community benefits it wasn't that each applicant were being asked to do something different, but yet it was a percentage of the overall revenue that was being generated by that business. And that 1% could then get wrapped back into the community. So I just wanted to raise that as a point of clarification that the community benefits is already considered as part of the additional sales tax.
Thank you, Jeremy. I see that there's actually a caller. Is it too late now for the public to comment at this point? Do we just ignore that? I just wanted to address it since I see hand up from the public.
That's your choice.
Choice, Chair.
Oh, that's my choice. Okay. If it's okay with my commissioners, we haven't made a motion yet. Are you willing to hear from, I'd be willing to hear from the public comment right now. Secretary Chan, can you arrange that?
Does that require you to reopen the public comment?
Well, I think this is just, we're still in an item. I think that public comment was the previous open public comment. Is that right, Joe?
You can reopen public comment right now, take the call, and then close public comment again.
Okay, so let's officially open the public comment and take the call.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. Biersberry, please unmute yourself. Paige Biersberry.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. As a business owner in the area, owning a number of units, we actually support having the business operation until 10 p.m. because it gets very quiet and very dark down there. So having people down there that time of night, having business operations is welcome. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for calling in. Thank you. I think so, Secretary Chan, I think that was the only caller we had. And I'll go ahead and close the public comment again. And if there are no further comments from the commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the item?
Point of information before motion is made. I just want to be clear for the staff. So I'm willing to obviously not, push in the process that we make some condition for a community benefit for some additional spending, given what Jeremy explained, for the purpose behind the kind of Hayward Community Foundation funding model and sort of the broad tax revenue base. What then the staff, what is the appropriate way that if, as a planning commissioner, I feel like I want to make that known, is that money just simply controlled by the Hayward Community Foundation, which is separate from the city, or does the city have say over how that money is spent, and how can we, if at all, make any kind of impact in that way to sort of ensure that it's being spent to mitigate the health impacts that cannabis may impose in the community?
Yeah, so that's really kind of a policy discussion with the city council. I don't know if they've hammered out all the details on how the funding. I think a lot of it is going to be contingent upon what revenues actually come in. But again, I'm not quite sure about the program details. I do know that as part of the conversation that we've had with several applicants, and as part of the conversation that we've had even with council on projects that have gone to council, is that, when many of these applicants were originally chosen back in 2017, they were chosen because there was a community benefit component that they had dedicated themselves to provide. And so to the degree that a lot of the applicants are still willing to do some of that, we would continue to hold that obligation because they were actually selected as a community benefit was part of their scoring component. Again, I think since their original selection, I think the council, took a different course of action to really more formalize it citywide on how to best meet community needs with those resources that would be coming in. And that's, I think, why they decided to standardize that sales tax. But I do know that, there have been other programs and other businesses that have, that have voluntarily decided to do some, outreach to members of the community. I think one of the applicants recently were proposing to, adopt the street to help clean up some of the street in the neighborhood. And they were actually going to partner with the school district to do some education. So, those are all things. And, ultimately, I think, if the planning commission wanted to ensure that the original prior commitment that they had made, as part of their business plan is still maintained intact. I mean, you certainly could do that, but understanding that, the overall framework in that discussion has somewhat changed since when they were originally selected back in 2017.
Thank you, Jeremy. All right, Commissioner O'Connor, did you want to?
Yeah, well then with that, if my fellow commissioners don't mind, I would move to approve this item, and I would add given what Jeremy just said, and I respect that there was a kind of another process put in place, but I think ultimately feel that the applicant has already in this call agreed to do some extra outreach and participation and potentially funding support for these kinds of programs. And so I'd like to hold them to that. And so I'd like to modify or the recommendation to include a condition that they do that. I don't know exactly what language that would take. Maybe someone could help me with that, or staff could help how that would work in a motion. But that's what I intend to try to do. And if other commissioners would be on board, but could staff speak to that? Like, what is a condition of approval that I would have to, include in the modification as a modification of the staff recommendation for this item?
All right, thank you, Commissioner Kenda. Do we have any clarification on that? Because it sounds like it would have to be pretty broad, and they have. All right, Joe, if you could input on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm kind of questioning what the issue is. The public benefits portion was dealt with at the council level when they issued the permits, and I believe we have Mike Vigilia from the city attorney's office online, who's our cannabis expert, and he can clarify that if I misstate it. But so in the land use perspective, which is in front of the commission today, we would really be trying to condition, any approval to mitigate any impacts that we see, the commission sees from this potential business. So it's kind of a nuanced distinction between a public benefit as opposed to a mitigation for possible impact. So I guess if you could expound upon what you're looking for.
Let me just make it very simple. I motion to approve this item with staff recommendations. It looks like the condition of approval 26 covers this, so I'm satisfied. Sorry for drawing that out. Again, new commissioner, just trying to figure this out. Thank you.
Yeah, very complicated. Thank you.
You're doing great. You're doing great. So we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Go ahead, Commissioner Stevens.
I'll second the motion.
Chair, I believe you're on
Sorry.
mute.
Thank you. Commissioner Ali Sullivan, we have a motion on the table. Did you have a question about the motion?
Yes, I'm wondering if Chair Okenda will take a friendly amendment to the motion to include an additional condition of approval that the applicant participate in the City of Hayward Adopt a Block program.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment. Is that workable?
Sorry, Commissioner Stevens, do you accept that as a friendly amendment?
I believe that's a lovely idea.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit for the proposed cannabis microbusiness to allow delivery, distribution, and manufacturing uses based on the analysis set forth in this report and the requiring findings subject to the conditions of approval with the amendment that the applicant adopt the block around it for the City of Hayward. Does that sound right? Okay, Secretary Chan, can we call a vote on that?
All right, thank you, Chair. I have a question for staff. So the friendly amendment by Commissioner Ali Sullivan to add the condition of approval that the applicant participate in the Adopt a Block program, is that correct? The language, okay. So is there already an existing condition of approval that covers that area, or would this be a new condition of approval?
Secretary Chan, this would be a new condition of approval.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Commissioner Ali Sullivan.
Aye.
Commissioner Bonilla.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldstein.
Aye.
Commissioner Okenda.
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yes.
Chair Roche.
Yes.
Thank you. That is 6 ayes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let us move on to item number 3 on the agenda. The proposed industrial campus with 3 speculative industrial buildings and a 3-story data center on an approximately 26-acre site located at 25800 Clawwater Road, requiring approval of major site plan review and conditional use permit application number 201906718 and adoption of a mitigated negative declaration with mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Teresa Goodwin, Architecture, on behalf of Janet Galvez, owner. And can we hear from staff on this item?
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners. Elizabeth Blanton, Associate Planner. The final item we'll be reviewing tonight is an application for major site plan review and a conditional use permit to allow a new industrial campus on the 26-acre site that was formerly home to the Gillig bus manufacturing facility. A major site plan review is required because the project exceeds 10 acres, and a conditional use permit is required because one of the proposed industrial buildings exceeds 150,000 square feet in size. You may recall that this body previously reviewed an earlier version of this application at a work session last February, and the plans that will be presented this evening reflect the final proposed version of the project. And in my presentation, I'll highlight how the project has changed since you last saw it. The project site is located off of Clawwater Road in the heart of the industrial district. The site's prominence is enhanced by its clear visibility from Highway 92 when entering or exiting the city. Taking a closer look at the site, we can see that the northern portion is currently developed with a manufacturing building and several smaller accessory buildings, and the southern portion is vacant and partially paved. The northern portion of the site is located in the general industrial zoning district, while the southern portion is in the industrial park zoning district. And according to the zoning ordinance, the general industrial district is intended to accommodate a wide variety of industrial uses, including heavy industrial and warehousing and distribution uses, where on the other hand, the Industrial Park District is intended to provide areas for high technology, research and development, as well as industrial activities in more of a campus-like atmosphere. The site is bordered by a rail line to the east and an active rail spur that runs directly through the project area. And as a result, there's no connectivity between the northern and southern portions of the site. As we'll see in a future slide, the southern portion of the site is accessed via an easement through that neighboring property to the west. There are a number of industrial and commercial uses surrounding the property, including the former Berkeley Farm site to the north, the Mount Eden Business Park to the east, and a range of auto repair, manufacturing, cannabis, and industrial uses to the west. Now, before we delve into the proposed project itself, I want to highlight the recommendations and guidance that the applicant has received to date. A very preliminary version of the project was reviewed by the Council Economic Development Committee back in October of 2018. At that meeting, the CEDC expressed a desire for flexible spaces on the site that would attract commercial, office, advanced manufacturing, and or research and development uses rather than just warehouses, given the highly visible gateway, as they said, nature of the site. In addition, they wanted to see the overall look of the project reflect commercial and office characteristics. And in particular, they wanted to see strong design features along the frontages that face Highway 92, as that represents the most visible face of the project site. At a work session last February, this body offered additional direction to the applicant. You said that you wanted to see enhanced architectural treatments on facades that would be visible from Clawwater Road or Highway 92, in line with the CEDC's recommendation. And you also said that to justify a proposed height increase the applicant was seeking, which I'll discuss more in a few slides, that you wanted to see a larger slate of public benefits and amenities, including potentially incorporation of a public art piece that highlights local history. You recommended improved bike infrastructure to the site on Clawwater. And this recommendation stems specifically from public comment that we received at that meeting from a former Gillig bus employee who used to bike to work on Clawwater and said that the facilities were lacking. You said that you wanted to see opportunities for walking paths or exercise spaces for employees. You mentioned a space for food trucks to reduce the need of employees to go off-site and get in their cars and drive for lunch, but rather to have a place to gather on site. And then just generally, you said you wanted to see improved amenities for workers that are befitting of an industrial campus. So the final version of the proposed project that I present to you today includes 4 new buildings ranging in size from just over 56,000 square feet to nearly 279,000 square feet. Buildings 1 through 3 are industrial speculative buildings that are 1-story tall with no identified tenants at this time. And building 4 is being designed as a 3-story data center. In addition, future tenant improvements will also include a transformer yard that will serve the data center via some transmission lines connecting to an off-site PG&E substation. And as you can see, kind of looking at this plan, the proposed site plan features 17% landscaping on the northern portion of the site and 22% landscaping on the southern portion. This actually greatly exceeds the requirements for the IG and IP zoning districts, again, helping to establish a more campus-like feel. Access to both the northern and southern portions of the site is provided from Clawwater Road. Here you can see more clearly the location of the access easement for the southern portion of the site that runs through that adjacent property. In addition, as conditioned, the southern portion of the property will also provide emergency vehicle access across the rail spur, ensuring that there are 2 points of access in the event of an emergency to that southern portion of the site. Pedestrian paths are generally located around the perimeter of buildings, and clearly marked shared bike paths will allow safe access for employees who are electing to cycle to work. In addition, there's a bus stop located immediately in front of Building 3, which provides additional convenience for those taking transit to work. The rendering here shows buildings 1 and 2 on the southern portion of the site, closest to Highway 92. The buildings, as you can see, feature glass, wooden elements, projecting shapes, with special design emphasis put on the entrances and that facade that is facing Highway 92. In response to direction received from the CEDC and from this body, This design is really intended to be attractive to a wide range of uses, including biotech, R&D, creative manufacturing, as well as more traditional industrial uses. You can also get a glimpse here of a central plaza area between buildings 1 and 2, which I'll show in greater detail in a couple of slides. This rendering shows what the proposed project would look like from its street frontage along Clawwater Road. And as you can see, this portion of the site has many of the same architectural features as the southern portion of the site, again, creating this more cohesive campus-like feel. New landscaping along Clawwater and new signage with the Hayward green letter H will also serve to beautify the corridor and create an attractive entrance to the industrial area for those entering off of Highway 92. The proposed project provides a total of 320 auto parking stalls, 45 truck trailer spaces, and 40 long and short-term bicycle parking spaces across the site. As conditioned, there's also EV parking spaces at each building and in accordance with the city's REACH code. While this meets or exceeds the requirements for buildings 1, 2, and 3 for parking, the applicant is requesting a reduction in parking for building 4, which is, again, the data center, from the 140 parking spaces that would typically be required for a building of that size down to 50 spaces, which is shown on this proposed plan in front of you. The applicant justifies this request by stating that the data center will have 3 employee shifts ranging from 8 employees to a maximum of 30 employees. In addition, the applicant has provided an alternative parking plan, which is what we're looking at here, that demonstrates that should a different use occupy this building in the future, 140 parking spaces could be accommodated on this parcel without having to make changes to the building itself. Section 10-2.420 of the Hayward Municipal Code grants the approving body the authority to make an exception to parking requirements in a case such as this, when there's an unusually low number of employees required for a given use. So as a result, staff is supportive of the applicant's request to reduce the amount of parking for the data center. In addition to a reduction in parking, the applicant is also seeking an increased height for building 4. As you can see from these elevations, the proposed building is 3 stories high, which measures 88 feet to the top of the roof and 108 feet to the top of the rooftop screening. This exceeds the maximum height of 75 feet allowed in the general industrial zoning district. However, the zoning ordinance does offer some flexibility to decision makers to allow for increased heights for buildings going through the major site plan review process like this project is, as long as one of the following conditions is met. So first, increased building height may be approved if the additional height is necessary to provide for a more beneficial site layout. Or secondly, the increased height may be approved if it will result in public benefits or amenities that could not have otherwise been achieved. So to justify the requested height increase for building 4 and in response to recommendations from this body during the February 2020 work session, the applicant has proposed a number of public and employee benefits and amenities. To start, a large courtyard gathering plaza is proposed in the southern portion of the site between buildings 1 and 2. The plaza features a range of seating clusters and benches, shaded canopy areas, scooter parking, and a small vegetable garden. This space would be appropriate for hosting food trucks at lunch or other events, as was suggested by the Commission last February. Also in line with the Commission's prior recommendations is the inclusion of a walking path around Building 3 on the northern portion of the site. And as you can see here in some of these images, this path will include some stretching and workout stations to allow employees to get some exercise in during their work days. And for those that don't necessarily want to exercise, but still like to enjoy break times outside, there will also be seating clusters and pergolas to enjoy a break or a lunch outside. Finally, there will also be a third employee amenity area outside of Building 4 for the data center employees. There's fewer of them, so the space is a little smaller, but it also features outdoor seating and attractive landscaping. In addition to the outdoor gathering spaces, the Commission previously expressed an interest in seeing public art incorporated into this project. In response to this, the applicant has brought on consultant Art Source to assist in commissioning a site-specific art piece for the site. Possible pieces could include like a freestanding sculpture, some sort of unique wall treatment, or creative hardscaping, or a combination of multiple things. As shown on this slide are some pieces of art that the consultant has commissioned for other projects around the Bay Area, and more of this can be seen in the art plan, which is included as attachment 5 to this agenda item. The consultant will conduct an RFP process to find a local artist to design the artwork for this project, and to especially encourage Hayward artists to apply, the consultant will work with local art groups to get the word out about the RFP. As conditioned, the design and placement of the final art piece or pieces will be approved by the Planning Division as part of the building permit review process. Additional benefits that the applicant will provide include an approximately $50,000 contribution towards bicycle infrastructure improvements along Clawwater. Based on Transportation Division estimates, this contribution would cover the cost of adding new bicycle lanes along a roughly half-mile segment of this corridor, which obviously greatly exceeds the length of the project street frontage. Obviously, this would not only benefit the future employees at the site, but also those working in the surrounding area. And further, it's going to help the city construct the bicycle network identified in the city's bike and pedestrian master plan. The Building 4 tenant has also been in earnest talks with the city to extend recycled water infrastructure to the site in the future. And while the city is not in a position to currently know what our timeline is for such an extension, partnership with the Building 4 tenant on this in the future could offer a huge benefit, not only to the tenants of this site, but also to those in the surrounding area that may be interested in tapping into new purple pipe infrastructure. An initial study evaluating the potential environmental impacts of the project was prepared in accordance with CEQA. It found that the proposed project would result in potential impacts in the areas of air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, geology and soils, greenhouse gas emissions, hazards and hazardous materials, and tribal cultural resources. However, with standard or project-specific mitigation measures, all identified impacts were able to be reduced to a level of less than significant. So this means that a mitigated negative declaration is the appropriate level of environmental review for this project. The draft ISM&D was released for public review between December 4th and January 4th. We received 4 comment letters regarding construction impacts, alignment with state mandates, environmental oversight, impacts to sensitive receptors, and the document's analysis methodology. Responses to all comments received are included in the rather lengthy response to comments section of attachment 7. I'm sure you all enjoyed thoroughly reading this weekend, as well as some slight revisions to the draft ISM&D itself as a result of these comments. None of the revisions resulted in a greater number of impacts or impacts of a substantially greater severity than those set forth in the draft document. So a mitigated negative declaration remains the appropriate level of environmental review for the project. I will mention here that consultant Rincon assisted the city in the environmental analysis for this project, and Carly Kaufman and Annalise Miller from Rincon are available this evening to answer any questions that the commission may have about the analysis and the conclusions in it. Finally, since the staff report and related attachments were released last Friday, a few revisions have been made. These revisions are included in the red line in the documents received after agenda publishing that was sent to the commission and posted earlier this evening. The first revision is a minor modification to mitigation measure GHG1 in the mitigated neg deck. This change, which removed a clause related to the required GHG reduction plan, was made in response to a letter received from the Cool World Institute after the close of the public comment period on the ISM&D. While the city doesn't believe that the change was necessary from a legal or CEQA standpoint, staff in consultation with our CEQA consultant and the applicant agreed to make the change so as to clarify the amount of reduction that is required by the mitigation measure. As this mitigation measure is also a condition of approval, the same change was made in the conditions of approval document. In addition, further changes to the conditions of approval include some clarification language around a $500,000 deposit for a new signal and a new landscaping condition that clarifies excuse me, that landscape improvements along Clawwater must be completed as part of Building 4's building permit. So with that, staff recommends that the commission approve the proposed major site plan review and conditional use permit application, along with the related mitigated neg deck and mitigation monitoring and reporting program prepared for this project. This concludes staff's presentation, though I will let the chair know that the applicant has also prepared a brief presentation to share with the commission before we get to commission questions.
Thank you, Associate Penner Blanton. So then let's hear from the applicant at this time.
And I will let the applicant know I'm pulling up your presentation. Give me 1 second. Okay, and Janet and Teresa, are you available? Are you able to speak?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. That's going to be a tough act to follow. Great presentation, and good evening, everyone. My name is Janet Galvez, and I'm the project manager for this project. I'm excited to come before you today to seek approval on Heinz's proposed project involving the redevelopment of the former Gaelic facility. A bit of background about our firm. I think, Elizabeth, you can do the next slide. Next slide. Great. A bit of background about our firm. Heinz is a global real estate company focusing on acquisition and development of commercial properties. We target best-in-class locations with the mindset of producing best-in-class developments. In the recent years, we made a strong push for industrial development across our platform due to investor demand and market fundamentals, which have been further accelerated by the recent pandemic. Many of us, including myself, have relied on the delivery of goods and services by delivery workers and data processing facilities. Now I'd like to introduce our team. HPA is our master plan architect. Kieran Wright is our civil engineer. Salas O'Brien is the building 4 architect. Buckhalter is our land use consultant. And Cushman & Wakefield is our leasing agent. They are all present today and here to help answer questions. Last but not least, our extended team member, the City of Hayward. I want to thank the planning commissioners for your time today and staff for an outstanding job helping us get where we are today. We purchased the site in February 2019, so this has been 2 years in the making. When we started this process, our approach was to be a partner to the city. I wanted this to be collaborative and rewarding for everyone involved. Elizabeth, our planner, I can't thank her enough. She was the gatekeeper and was extremely diligent in getting input from various staff members and departments to get us here in order to provide a best-in-class project. I seriously cannot thank her enough. I think I was calling her at least 5 times a day leading up to this planning commission. As Elizabeth mentioned, we went to CEDC, we listened. Conducted a planning commission work session, we listened. At the various stages, we listened, and it was unanimous that the city wanted an attractive project with amenities giving the visibility from the freeway, we listened. And over a period of 18 months, there were several versions of the site plan, the design, the overall business plan in order to achieve the city's goals and objectives. Next slide.
Chair Roche.
Next slide.
I'm very sorry to interrupt. The screen we're not seeing the whole screen. I don't know if any other folks are having an issue with that, but Elizabeth, I'm not seeing the full slide.
It's cut off a little bit.
Yeah, it's almost.
Is it cut off in the sense that there's 2 black stripes on either side?
Yeah, it's almost zoomed in too much, I think.
I think it's just because the aspect ratio of Janet's slides were just a little different than mine. So mine were set up to fill the whole screen where she used a different PowerPoint slide. But could you see, just to double check, do you see a white border around the image here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are seeing the whole thing, but yes, you're correct. There's black on both sides. Okay, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Sorry. Should have done a trial run, Elizabeth. That's one thing we missed. Currently on the site is a 60-year-old, 280,000 square foot building that is obsolete and does not fit today's tenants' needs. It had environmental issues that have now been characterized. The site railroad spur, as Elizabeth pointed out. North of the rail lies the existing vacant building, and south of the rail is currently occupied by an auto auction lease, an existing tenant for auto auction. Our goals and objectives for the project are